All right, let's head over to the Zoom Cloud Studio in the Sky, where we've got Mr. Joe Sinnott on the line with us here. He's out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, the Marcellus Shale play. He's an executive coach, and it's the holiday season, man. How you doing?
Navigating the normal craziness that I think everybody is dealing with this time of year there, Jason.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit crazy because you get these office parties that are coming up, and you've got just your own parties that are coming up, and in my lifetime, it's been interesting to see the evolution of Christmas, how it was a day that demanded the day off, and now it's when everybody gets together and everybody meets their schedule and, having kind of an organic unwrapping of that right now, that present, that mental present as we speak, Joe. So old enough to realize and remember some of those days. But, yeah. So, do you guys do much around the holidays? Do you guys have a Christmas day? I suppose you do with the kids and everything, huh?
Yeah, we're here on Christmas, so Christmas Eve into Christmas Day. Let's say we have our traditions and our standards there, and then we'll be hosting a party for my wife's side of the family there, so her siblings and their kids and her parents. So that'll happen this year after Christmas. So yeah, we've got a couple things that are reoccurring, if you will, from year to year.
All right. So let's get right to what we're talking about because we're talking a little bit about some holiday plans and some holiday festivities. And we were going to do the interview a little bit earlier. Christmas time and the holidays caught up with us to where we're doing it now. So some of this is going to be past tense for some of you, but Christmas parties do go into January still to this day. And that has to do mostly with the venue planning more than anything, as long as we're giving credit due where credit needs to be due, where society changed. I got a list here, Joe. You ready for the list of do's and don'ts for your executive coach holiday party?
I'm ready, Jason.
All right, this is courtesy of our good friend with artificial intelligence here. Do attend. Even a short appearance shows you value the team and company culture. What do you think of that? Is that overrated, or is that something that you should probably do?
Yeah, not only is it a logical thing to do, but I think it applies all year long, right? You don't have to make every appearance, you don't have to make every meeting, 100% commitment. Showing up, making a contribution, offering what you can, and then moving on is perfectly fine. But again, a lot of us are wired to be, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. We're going to be all in. But that doesn't mean you have to close the party down and be the center of attention. You can show up and bow out. And again, that's a great lesson all year round.
So, and we're going to talk about dressing appropriately in just a second. What does that mean during the holiday season? But you need to dress your words appropriately too during the holiday season. And so mingling can get you in trouble pretty quick. And I'm not even talking about if you got an alcoholic beverage in your hand, but today's day and age, you might want to stay in some safe lanes. You might not want to get too into the politics, or maybe you do. I don't know. Joe, you got any advice on the mingling? How do you dress the words?
Yeah, well, I think anything you can do that's going to stop the flow of words from your mouth is helpful. And of course, I think the most helpful thing is a question. So, you know, erring on the side of asking a question so that you can shut up, so that you can think for a bit and let the other person go is typically a good default. Now, there's plenty of questions you can ask that are also inappropriate and that can get you in trouble. Don't get me wrong. But by and large, if you're asking questions, getting the other person talking, and again, whether you've had a drink or not, resisting the temptation, or some people are hardwired to just keep going, right? The old diarrhea of the mouth is dangerous any time of the year, but especially this time of year when it seems to happen a little bit more easily. So ask that question, be ready with some good questions to shift it to the other person.
I'm going to make a note that I'm going to put the drink down and put a cocktail wiener appetizers in my hand so I can just put those in my mouth whenever I start to feel the verbal diarrhea coming, because you got to shut yourself up somehow. So
I thought you were going to say you were going to name a drink diarrhea of the mouth. That's which maybe there is one out there already. I don't know.
that would be a great seller, especially at a 21st birthday. People would buy it as kind of it's coming to go ahead and have the diarrhea of the mouth. We used to have what's called pond water, and that's where The bartender would take that rubber thing that catches all the drinks throughout the night, and they pour it into a glass, and then they give it to you. And apparently, you're supposed to give them $5 for that honor. Whew. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back to some of the holiday do's and don'ts, but dress appropriately. What do you think about something like that? Ugly Christmas sweater. I mean, yeah, they're thematic at times, but man, now you're getting into some competition. You're also being part of the team. How do you go on that? Because for me, I'm such an old school guy. I just, okay, I'll put a collar on. Is that enough? Is that, I'll comb my hair. Is that enough?
Yeah, Jason, I'm not going to be the person to talk to when it comes to fashion, other than if you are going outside of sort of what people would expect of you, just be mindful of it, right? And that can work both ways. Sometimes you're that, you got the perception as that stick in the mud, maybe you're black and white type manager approach, and you show up wearing something out of the ordinary, and that can be a great way to, again, let loose, maybe not let loose, but show that your guard is down, you're doing stuff a little bit differently. But at the same time, if you're doing it in a way that people say, that individual is just seeking attention, if you suspect that that's a possibility, then maybe think twice. So, Jason, I mean, it's a dangerous word, but it's discretion. If you're going to go sort of outside what would be expected, otherwise, stick to the rule of being neat, being put together. Even in the most casual of situations, there's no reason that you can't, come across as uh, clean, if you will. Maybe
Well, and
is the
that's where I was
opposite.
going to go with I was going to give a little bit of strategy and a little insider tip, if you will, that I think could be relevant to some people who are watching this particularly. But if you are looking for a new role next year, and let's say that role is you want to get out of the field and into the office, or you want to, do something maybe that is more the transportation type of a thing, dressing the part at the holiday party in a way that's professional can really help you set the stage for the next year. It's almost like a first impression once again, like, oh, look at him. He cleans up nice. Have you ever thought about him out of the out of the field? And it's a subtle thing, but those are some things that people can do around this time of year, because you can always play it off to, oh, it's the party, the spouse made me do it, and hey, sorry, I got the dress code mixed up. I thought it was a black tie and I was underdressing. You can make a joke of it, Joe, is what I'm saying. And people like that because they're like, oh, maybe he is cut out for the office. Look at him. He can deflect. Hey, let's rush him to management. He can deflect. So what do you think about that? Dressing for kind of strategy.
Yeah, well, it checks a lot of the boxes that I like to check when I'm working with folks, Jason. One of which is being conscious, being aware, right? At least asking the questions and not just going through it blindly or just listening to what your spouse told you to do. The second one, of course, is what you just touched on: humor. Yeah, having the opportunity to invoke humor, especially if, and here's kind of the third pillar, you're prepared. So it's okay to have a joke or two ready. In fact, this time of year, I would argue, showing up to a holiday party, being, what you might argue is potentially overdressed, and then being ready to talk to, somebody a level or two above you and say, hey, one of the reasons I overdressed is I heard that, this is the way to make an impression because, I'm looking for that promotion next year. To be able to deliver that naturally, a little bit of tongue in cheek, but also, enough seriousness this time of year when, again, people's guards are down, you know, that ability to do that can really move the needle, Jason. And again, so needless to say, I agree 100% with what you're saying. But again, I think it takes a little bit of preparation. And I'll be honest, this is the type of thing that, believe it or not, shows up in coaching, especially from a leadership standpoint, multiple times dealing with a leader who is expected to say a couple words at a holiday party, at some sort of corporate function, and working on that opening joke, working with how they show up, not so much on the attire side of things, Jason, but definitely having some of that preparation so that you don't just look good, but everybody has a good time. You create the mood in the room, the temperature in the room that you want for the good of your audience, your guests, however you want to call them.
Keeping track of the notes, boys and girls, because he just gave you another tip there. If you want to plant that seed into the upper management's mind about giving you the promotion, he just gave you a jokely way to do it. You can say the truth in a passive aggressive joking way and plant the seed at the same time, huh, Joe? That's what you just did there. You see that strategy? That's pretty good. That's why they pay him the big bucks, folks. All right, let's take a look at the next one here and be inclusive. And I'm looking down at the don'ts, and I see gossip is down in the don'ts, so we should probably include the both of them together since we talked about mingling earlier. So in the do's, be inclusive, but in the don'ts, don't gossip. Fine line between all three of those, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, to stick with the gossip piece, no good is going to come from that. No good, especially in that setting. And that's where going back to one of the previous tips, right? Stick with asking questions, not a question of, hey, did you hear what so and so did last week? That's not an example of a good question, but yeah, keep it light. Don't fall into gossip and recognize, especially at these functions where, you might have significant others around, you know, they're listening in a different way. Typically they're doing a lot more listening. They might not be as engaged. They might not be familiar with folks, but boy, oh boy, is a guest at a company function or even a personal function. That guest is another set of eyes and ears that's going to be relaying their observations to somebody else later on. So be mindful of that. You don't want to be there being labeled as a gossip. You don't want to be there labeled as somebody who is, again, excluding others, the opposite of the inclusive tip there that you just read off. You want to be seen as somebody who is present, who asks good questions, who is intent on listening to answers to the questions that you're asking, Jason.
Taking a look at a couple more here, and it's stay present, keep it positive. Those are a couple more of the do's that are in there. And, keep it on the positive side. That's got to almost be at least over 50% authentic in order to work in today's day and age. It seems like people will tolerate it, but it might have a reverse effect if you're unauthentically positive. And not for everybody, but there are those out there, especially when people start, caring about gas prices and they start noticing that tomato soup cans have gone up a little bit more in price. Their tolerance level seems to go down a little bit. And so to me, that would be my advice that, obviously be positive and don't do the gossiping. But at the same time, if you're not a positive person, you might want to find 3 or 4 things to focus on throughout the night. So I'm going to hand the baton off to you on that, on, stay positive and, that sort of thing. Keep the good times flowing, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it comes down to preparation, Jason. Just because you're prepared with answers that are positive to the question of how you're doing, that doesn't mean it's inauthentic. It just means you've thought about it ahead of time. And again, you're not going to put your foot in your mouth. So preparation is one piece. But in terms of the on the fly, on the fly reaction to somebody else that's negative or somebody that's, bringing up news that maybe you haven't even heard of yet, maybe it's something going on in the world or something within your company or whatever. One tip that, gosh, I would be shocked if you and I haven't talked about this over the years, Jason, but either way, it's something I bring up all the time. It's my favorite tool. It's what I like about that. Even if somebody brings up the crappiest news imaginable, the most negative situation imaginable, your ability to genuinely say, well, what I like about the projected dip in natural gas prices, or what I like about, the potential of more consolidation that might result in job losses is X. And again, you could do that almost tongue in cheek. Again, this time of year, humor, lean into the humor all you want, as long as it's, somewhat appropriate. But to be able to genuinely pause and say, what I like about this otherwise crappy situation is X. And if only we could, achieve X, achieve that positive, that silver lining, if you will, without the downside. Oh boy, wouldn't that be great? Your ability to do that on the fly is huge, Jason. And that's why, again, it's my favorite tool. I encourage people to practice it because you know what? It is genuine. You're not saying, I like that. Ooh, I'm excited about low gas prices. No, that would be a blatant lie. But to say that you understand that there are some, some fruit, if you will, that might be born from that situation. That's a great way to respond to either an individual who's negative or somebody who's sharing news that might otherwise be negative, Jason. What I like about it. What I like about it.
Couple of the don'ts here. One, I'm not sure if we want to get into. Two of the other ones I'll go ahead and ask you about, but the one I'm not sure if we really want to get into, it says cross boundaries. Don't flirt excessively or make inappropriate romantic moves. And that's such a gray area in people's lives and people's companies, and it becomes such a charged area, if you will, that you're mixing in alcohol, and a lot of people, they're, hey, it's a gift to me. I mean, Joe, I can go into 1,000 justifications I've heard over the years, and I can go into 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do it. I think most people know they're not supposed to mix the two together, but it happens. And I don't know if you got any comments on that, because it's a landmine issue.
I guess my comment is that I agree. Maybe my second thought is, again, play the long game. If you're in that situation and you really, are inclined to, again, choosing my words carefully here. If you're really inclined to say something that might move a work relationship into something more, or ask somebody on a date, think about how much more powerful it is to come back in the new year and say, hey, you know what? I was tempted to say this at the Christmas party, or tempted to ask you out at the Christmas party. I didn't think it was appropriate then, but in our conversation, I committed in the new year to broaching it at perhaps a more appropriate time. It's a great way to preserve that excuse to make the actual engagement even stronger down the road. Again, this is not a dating show here. I don't typically give that type of advice, but if you're playing the long game, then then you shouldn't be feeling like this is my only opportunity to make this, to make this happen. Because guess what? It probably isn't. So again, I'm certainly out of my element here, Jason, but that's how I would typically view it, which is slow down and ask yourself how not acting on your inclinations in the moment could actually strengthen your odds of success later on.
Oh, I disagree. I think we got a weekly segment. Joe Sinnott's dating advice here on the horizon. All right, let's take a look at the don'ts here. The last two is be a parent, don't be a Scrooge. Don't be a parent, don't be a Scrooge. And the way that they describe it is that if someone's drinking too much, handle it discreetly, like calling a cab. Don't scold them publicly. And then the be a Scrooge is, don't show up. And if you do show up, don't act like you're disinterested for showing up. So I'm going to lump those two together there. I got to agree with both of them on that.
Yeah. And again, I'm sure you and I, Jason, both would like to think that that's common sense to, again, not just to, I don't want to say play the middle ground there, but to be discreet, to be tactful. I mean, you would hope you do that in all situations, not just at holiday parties. But yeah, I don't know how much there is to add there, Jason, other than, be creative, be innovative, right? There's more than one way to stop the person who's already had too much. And there's more than one way to show up in a situation where you really don't want to be there, but not leave that impression. A little bit of creativity can navigate both of those. Again, whether it's finite things like calling a cab for somebody, or again, we've already talked about it multiple times here today, and again, countless times over the years, humor. Finding a way to use humor to kind of broach things with somebody who's had too much to drink, or broach the fact that you don't want to be there. A well-placed joke, Jason, can keep the tone where you want it to be this time of year.
And I'm pretty certain that most companies would probably buy a cab or an Uber if another employee came up to him and said, Johnny's had way too drink. Can we get him an Uber? And so there are some creative ways around that. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, if you find 3 things to just focus on, that should get you through any evening, any conversation. After you after you have three different topics of conversation with a person at a Christmas party, you can easily excuse yourself and go get another cocktail weenie. That's another piece of shrimp. I mean, that's you've done more than your non-Scrooge placement. So, all right, let's transition into the. And by the way, this is the type of stuff that Joe Sinnott will help you with as a executive coach and everything along those lines. And I wanted to preface that because we're going to get into the year in review, which I like to do with a lot of our regular contributors. And for someone like you that's had kind of a year in review, does much change in your industry? I imagine that when new compliances come in, that you're somebody they call, or if they need, besides the refresher or new employees, or somebody who just needs an outside pair of eyes, which is always useful. But how would somebody describe your year in a review, Joe, from your point of view and in the industry?
Well, 12 months of people and helping people deal with people problems. So regardless, as you put, Jason, regardless of what's going on with commodity prices or mergers and acquisitions and, the political realm and regulatory stuff, at the end of the day, most of what I work on with people is communication. It's, managing the temperature in teams and in organizations. And there's always going to be something that people are responding to, and there's always going to be a way to respond more effectively or, less effectively. And because of that, Jason, that's what I've done for the last 12 months is help people navigate whatever season they're in, literally or figuratively. And so, yeah, to that end, 2025 was much of that. Yes, that was all done, against the backdrop of I would say, a lot of optimism in the industry with, some of the things going on from again, a political standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint. I would argue also, against the backdrop of this proliferation of data centers, or at least data center related conversations. But at the end of the day, Jason, 2025 was just another year of helping people think more clearly, communicate more effectively, act with more confidence and executive presence. And, I'm looking forward to much of the same in 2026.
Well, how about 2026? Yeah, you mentioned much of the same, but have you got your year mapped out? And I talked to Warren Martin earlier, and with Kansas Strong, they've already got all their events mapped out for 2026 and everything else. But for someone like yourself, you've been pretty active either on the mentor stage or the participation stage with some of the petroleum engineers and some of the Marcellus events. Have you got any events or updates that you're going to be doing here in 2026?
Well, I thought I had my year pretty well mapped out, Jason, but now apparently I'm going to be doing a weekly dating show or date coaching show
Yeah.
here with you. So I might have to revisit some things. But
Mm-hmm.
that being said, assuming that doesn't take up too much of my time, yeah, a lot of the stuff that I'll be at, a lot of the recurring meetings, they're already on the calendar through the end of the year. In terms of public appearances, performances, whatever you want to call them, not a lot beyond, the regular SPE tech talks that I have the privilege of doing on occasion. But honestly, Jason, a lot of the stuff, especially right out of the gate, is private workshops, private engagements with companies, which is really, that's the bulk of what I do, right? So, and I'd say the one thing I do need to prepare for that I've committed to doing a couple more in early 2026 is the Landman leadership workshop that I've been delivering to different companies. I've done some of them publicly, but tying in themes from Billy Bob Thornton and the gang, and themes from the Paramount Plus series Landman, and turning it into a fun leadership workshop focused on oil and gas, of course, but bringing in themes. I do need to prepare for that because I'm not caught up on my season 2 yet. So I'll be finding a window there in early 2026 to catch up and make sure that my workshop is as timely and topical as possible.
What's this all about now? I'm kind of new to this Landman workshop. So you're tying in themes and events from the show and doing a workshop on it?
Yeah, so essentially translating themes. Again, the original workshop was based on season 1, so all 10 episodes and the cast of characters and anecdotes and certain themes from each episode, bringing it into communication, decision making, confidence, how people carry themselves, all the types of tools that I work on regularly with individuals, all the types of tools that have made their ways into different workshops that I've delivered, but doing it through the lens of the show Landman, which again just makes it a little extra fun, helps the stuff stick just a little bit more. So taking anecdotes and examples from, say, the lawyers and how they carry themselves and saying, all right, well, how can, what kind of lessons can you gain from that? Taking lessons from how, Tommy Norris, Billy Bob Thornton's character, is able to carry himself in some pretty precarious situations and say, all right, well, you might not find yourself in that exact situation, but, how do you remain cool, calm, and collected when you are faced with, figurative cartels that are threatening your livelihood or your well-being or your life? So again, it's been a fun way to, again, take all the normal communication and leadership type stuff that you can get from anywhere else, but tie it into what we do in the oil and gas industry, tie it into a popular and ongoing show, and again, all to make this stuff stick just a little bit more, and make sure that people can deploy these leadership tools in the moment, because that's really the measure, Jason, of whether I'm effective as a coach or not. Can people actually deploy these tools, these mindsets, these approaches in the moment when they need them? Because again, think about somebody like Tommy Norris, right? Billy Bob Thornton. He's not going to be flipping through a leadership or a communication or a negotiation book there saying, hold on a second there. Don't shoot me just yet. Let me thumb through and find out how I should respond to you. So, we kind of take the same approach in these workshops, whether they're delivered internally for companies or, some of the ones that I've delivered to public audiences.
Now, you're behind on this season. Is that correct? You're not caught up to
That's
all
correct.
the episodes?
So, no spoilers for me yet. So.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm just going to make sure that what I say, when you watch it, you're going to understand what I say. So, if you're doing things like this, you might make $1 million next year, because this season has really drifted away from oil and gas and into the interpersonal communication part of the industry. So the oil and gas part, like, it was heavy last year on a lot of scenes and a lot of different elements of the industry. That's basically B-roll and a backdrop now. And what you've got is like the women have pretty much moved into the home. Okay, well, when you got a man camp and now you bring in a couple of women, well, there's a trade show right there. I'm sorry, what do you call them? What's workshop? There's a workshop right there. Okay, and then so you've got the old school and the new school ways about this. They're coming to an head, where you've got the old way of doing the oil and gas business meeting the new way. That's coming to a head. There's a workshop right there. John Hamm passed at the end of last season, so this is not a spoiler. His wife takes over. Now you've got a power struggle of Tommy, the male, who's been running the company, and Cammie, who just took it over, who's the owner, and they both think they own the company. One's the true owner, and one actually knows how to run it. So there's a workshop right there. So I'm telling you, Joe, you're going to see. And by the way, the cartel stuff, you could do one just for the executives, because the way they're introducing Andy Garcia's character, he's flat out telling Billy Bob Thornton and Cammie, sharks are in the water. Get ready. Sharks are in the water. I mean, he's just flat out telling them what they're about to experience. And that's why I'm saying this is all interpersonal communication. It's relationships. The whole lawyer thing is another workshop. We were just talking this morning when we did our reaction show. Cooper, the young man who's actually from the industry, he's actually got a background in the industry. He's barely been on a rig all year. He's trying to get married, so he's in trying to get his personal life secured so he can now go to his professional life, which makes sense. That's how a lot of us do it. And anyway, so yeah, I think you're going to enjoy from that lens more than your oil and gas petroleum lens, if that makes sense, Joe Sinnott.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, appreciate the preview there, and the knowledge that I'm not off base here, committing to people that I'll have a Landman Leadership Workshop Part 2. Seems like I'll have plenty of material to tie in there. So
And
Good
they've
stuff.
already renewed season 3, so therefore it's gonna these storylines will carry. So now's the opportunity to strike while the iron is lukewarm. Actually, it is hot because it is like one of their number one shows. Honestly, I think this is more of a woman's show than it is a man's show now. And Warren and I both have agreed with that, and the numbers are bigger than ever. So it's a positive for the industry. And at the end of the day, it's a spokesman now for the industry. So it is.
Well, that's it. And I know, I mean, obviously, everybody's got an opinion around everything. I think at times, but I heard an interview with Mike Summers, the head of API, and he's all in on Landman. And again, they see it as an opportunity, right? What I like about Landman is the fact that it was an opportunity for them to jump in and advertise. So for people that aren't paying, that whatever the full or the premium ad-free subscription to Paramount Plus, and they're subjected to ads, well, at least on season 1. You had ads for API, and specifically ads that emphasized API's role in safety, because of all the probably not quite accurate portrayal of, of safety in our industry in season 1. Well, again, that was a perfect example of Mike Summers and API saying, hey, what I like about this is an opportunity to talk about what really happens from, American Petroleum Institute standpoint. And we're going to take advantage of these eyeballs and this visibility to talk about what's good. So again, Jason, I think, no matter what direction the show goes in, as long as there's a connection and an opportunity to fuel conversations, that's got to be a net positive, right?
And when is your workshop normally held for this? Is it March? You said months?
No,
Or?
these are year round. So these
Oh,
continue on. So there's no public ones on the books. So the last public one I did was back in October. So what I'm committed to is internally for companies that I'm working with to say, all
I
right,
see.
hey, let's go ahead and reboot, or for companies that haven't experienced it yet, let's go ahead and roll out the Landman Leadership Workshop. So that again, you got something that's a little bit more interesting and engaging for their employees.
Boy, I think those Society of Petroleum Engineer folks should have you host one of those workshops as a public invite type thing. I think it'd be fun. People would like it, and it'd be very educational. That's for sure. So, Joe Sinnott is the guest. He's the executive coach, Whitting Partners. He also does a podcast when he has time. And how's the podcast going as we wrap up here?
Yeah, in between seasons, Jason, in between seasons 6 and 7, actually. I had not made that connection until just now, but I'm sure if my kids were listening in and heard me make a 6, 7, yeah, there you go, 6,
Yeah.
7 reference, they'd be all over that. But yeah, gearing up for season 7, which is, probably not too many changes afoot, but as always, try to tweak things a little bit. So say by the end of January, should be back rolling again with, I don't know what episode we're on there, episode 125, something along those lines, for another series of episodes there, tying together leadership, energy industry, current events, and whatever else it is that floats through my brain on a given day, Jason.
Well, I suppose that's it for this year, folks. Joe Sinnott, I'm looking at the calendar here. It's just a couple days before Christmas. We'll probably circle back right after the new year unless something breaks in the world of executive coaching. And this is my correspondent to that news cycle right there. So if something breaks over Christmas in the executive coaching world, we'll have Joe Sinnott on the line. Otherwise, Joe, we'll probably see you next year. How's that sound?
Yeah, my money's on see you in 2026, Jason. But either way, thanks as always for the enjoyable opportunity, chance to weave in pop culture and energy and current events and year-end festivities.
All right, one more thing before we go, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to make a prediction that they're going to win a playoff game this year. That's my prediction. They will win a playoff game this year. Your thoughts?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, they just secured their whatever the record is here. They're another non-losing season, Jason. So to actually end their 8-year drought, I think, without a playoff victory would be something. So if they do, I'm going to give you full credit, Jason. Around town here, I'm going to say, hey, this Jason Spiess character, he called it. So
We should do a show on Mike Tomlin sometime. This is not a sports show, but at the same time, a man that's been over 500 successful for 19 straight years, right?
That'd be about right. Yeah.
Yeah. If so, okay, well, 15 to 20, whatever, 19 straight years. And because he doesn't win the Super Bowl every year, his job's on the line. And it's it's weird when you are stuck in the middle. And that's the conversation. When you're stuck in the middle, what do you do? Because remember when the Eagles did that, and then they got rid of Andy Reid, and Andy Reid went off and won a bunch of championships with the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Eagles did okay too. So it does work out sometimes, when you just need new scenery and new pastures type of a thing. But at the same time, that is such a hard thing to do when you're making money, things are going good, but at any given time, you could lose your fan base, you could lose your customers, you could lose your supply chain, because the public chatter is just never going in the right momentum. I think that would be an interesting, and there's some similarities in the oil field. That's where we got to kind of, in the energy industry, that's our job as professionals to tie that together. But that's your homework assignment for next year. We'll do the Mike Tomlin, executive coach session and that sort of thing, because it's a conundrum. The Atlanta Hawks had it for a long time. They called it the Dominique Wilkins syndrome. The guy was good enough to get you a 7th or 8th seed in the playoffs, a 15th or 16th, overall draft pick. So you're just mediocre forever. And it's tough to get out of that, the middle. So anyway, your thoughts as we end the interview here, sir?
I accept your assignment of outlining a leadership conversation based upon Mike Tomlin, the complex and much talked about, at least here, of course, in Pittsburgh sports talk circles, head coach of the Steelers, Jason. So I do look forward to that conversation.
My homework is going to be to find the Mike Tomlin quotes to layer in there, because never say never, but never. One of my all-time favorite quotes by any professional ever at a press conference. And he's had, as a person who's done press conferences, Mike Tomlin is just refreshing.
I concur, Jason. I concur. He is the standard, and then when it comes to quotes, and as he would say, the standard is the standard. So,
all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is Joe Sinnott. My name is Jason Spiess. We'll see you next year.